everyday witches emerge from the shadows of secrecy. Broom closets are flinging open and witches are taking flight. Whether you are hiding in your cozy closet or flying with pride, stay for a spell as Witchcasting with Theodora Pendragon and her guests share magical moments, stir the cauldron, and debunk misinformation and misconceptions about paganism, witches, and our wonderful world of magic.
Hey there, everyone. Theodora here. My special guest today is Kirsten. Kirsten and I didn't have anything else to do today, so here we are sitting in our pajamas, looking at each other in the camera. Hello, Kirsten.
Hello, Theodora. Thank you so much for having me.
You are a witch. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Tell us how you became a witch or was born a witch.
I was born a witch. I'm from Mexico City. My family's from Mexico City. I was raised very conservative Catholic. And interestingly enough, when I was a little girl, I could see ghosts. And when I was about 10 years old, I had a fever. I remember I was looking out my bedroom window and a little girl walked by. And I thought that was my sister, but it turned out nobody was home. So I told my mom and she goes, okay, I didn't want to tell you this when you were younger, but when I was a little girl, there was a ghost of a man who would sit in a full motorcycle gear in the rocking chair that they had in their nursery.
So tell us about the guy in the motorcycle suit.
My mom said that there would be a man sitting in a rocking chair in their nursery in their room, and he was in full motorcycle gear. And her sister saw him. It was just like a known fact. Funnily enough, my mother rejects anything occulty, dark. Ever since I was a little girl, I loved reading, and Stephen King was one of my first openings into other realms because my family did not allow it. It didn't allow, they just didn't know it. So I wasn't raised with anybody who introduced me to that until I went into my public library and took out Salem's Lot by Stephen King. And my whole world opened up. I was 9 years old when I read that book. And my mom was like, that is so dark. Why are you reading stuff like that? And I loved it.
But are you saying that your mom believed in ghosts or she did not believe in ghosts?
Did believe in ghosts. That's the irony. So I really, truly believe that my mother is a medium without even knowing it. And she rejects that part of her. And she's always had anxiety, but she has always accepted that I have seen ghosts as a little girl. It doesn't faze her. And she obviously would see it. And so it was a part of her childhood. But besides that, she rejects anything for her dark. So I feel like it's an untapped side to my mother because she feels so much energy from so many people. It's insane. And so in my spiritual practice, I have, through my experience, found that the more you reject certain sides of yourself, the deeper they latch on and manifest in other ways. As a child, I spent so much time alone. And it was voluntary. It was not because I was punished. Well, yeah, it wasn't because I was punished or I didn't really have friends. I didn't have friends a lot because I was weird, but because I lived so much in my imagination. I really did not need outside people. I mean, my mom would try to put me in play groups with our friends growing up, fellow immigrants as well, because we immigrated to the US. So they were all Mexican or Colombian or Venezuelan. And we would have pool parties, and they all had kids around my age. And every time my mom would come pick us up, I was always by myself playing with dolls or Polly Pockets or just by myself, creating these worlds. And so I really feel that in my spiritual practice, I was not afraid to go to the very dark depths of what my brain was. I explored it. I was curious. And to me, it just came naturally. So I feel like as I got older, I was able to embrace the shadow parts of myself and not be as afraid of them. So, I mean, say for taking psychedelics, I did a lot of psychedelics in my 20s. I never had a bad trip. And I'm not saying that in a bragging way. Like I have so much humility, so much respect for anything psychedelic because it really is a spiritual thing, whether you're knowing that you're going into it spiritually or not, it is a spiritual connection. And I really feel like I'd never had a bad trip simply because I was able to embrace the dualities that existed and not afraid to embrace those, what society would deem as dark, right? Like being able to see ghosts, being able to meet the parts of yourself that you judge really harshly, that you're afraid of, with compassion and not with fear, but more with the want to understand of where it comes from, why you're that way. My mom is a medium. To sum it up, I really believe it. And she just really quailed it down. So I think it passed on to me, to be honest.
Did you see that girl ghost again?
No, I never saw her again. But in that same house, we had several different occurrences where I would be by myself. So my parents traveled a lot, and this was in high school. So in that same house, I was showering. My parents had just left for Vegas. I always had the music up really loud when I would shower. It was a whole routine. My mom would come in, turn down the music, be like, turn it down. But they had left. So I was just full blasting. And I heard the door open, the music turned down, the door closed. And I was like, okay. And I got out of the shower and I was like, Mom, did you guys forget something? No answer. So I called my mother and she was like, we're already on the plane.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was like, okay. And then I lived in New Orleans for 10 years and I have worked in incredibly haunted bars, lived in very haunted apartments. I have had, I mean, really ever since I was a little girl, I've had encounters with ghosts or supernatural. I 100% believe in demons. I definitely believe in, I feel like manifestations of people when you allow yourself to be really dark because life has kind of pushed you down in that way. I have physically, I remember I was driving in New Orleans. I will never, ever forget this moment. And I locked eyes with this man who was walking on the street and his face completely morphed. Like, and it's never happened anywhere else outside of New Orleans. New Orleans is a whole different realm and portal to a whole different world that is not on this plane. I don't know a single person who feels that way that has lived in New Orleans that would disagree with me. It is not in this dimension. As soon as you just drive in and you just see it. And yeah, this man's face completely distorted. The fear that I felt and the chill, it was in that moment that I was like, there are really things here that we don't even comprehend. And New Orleans is a city of a lot of suffering. There's so much history of violence there. And that energy is so powerful. It's probably one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced in my entire life. I got lost in a world of a lot of drugs and alcohol. And a lot of it was to sort of quail all the feelings that come with, like, I feel like being able to feel other things that you can't necessarily explain, energies. I can just walk into a space and know if something has violently happened there or not. It's like an overpowering feeling that would happen to me when I grew up very privileged. I will say that. I'm the first to acknowledge that my parents were able to give us the luxury of being able to travel Europe in the summer. And my father was doing well with his company at the time. And he really, really gave us, his way of expressing love was with experiences. He would give us experiences. And so I do have to thank my parents for that and acknowledge the privilege that came with having that childhood of literally growing up staying in castles in Europe. Like, it was insane. It was beautiful. And also I'm a huge history nerd. So we would go to these castles or these event sites, and I would just know something would happen there. And I'd turn around and ask a tour guide, and they'd be like, yeah, actually, like, this happened, and I'd be like, yep. And my parents were always floored that I could know just anywhere we would go. They'd be like, oh, okay.
So when you knew something happened, did you see it?
No, it was just a feeling.
A knowing.
Yeah, just a knowing. Funny, this year is the year that I am 100% leaning into my intuition with no bars. I'm like, let's do it for the plot, right? Let's just go for it and let's see what happens, because everything else and me holding back and not listening has not gotten me where I've needed to go. So, I'm 34. I have nothing else to lose with it. And it's been a ride so far, but I have realized that there are moments, and I know this is in every single person's life. I believe this is a universal truth, that in your gut when something, your entire being, it's just, like, it's undiscernible. And I just get sort of, like, feelings, and a gut feeling of being like, something happened here, like something heavy or something light. Mostly it's the heavy. I don't know why I incline. I feel like that's just a heavier energy, of course. I don't really get the good feelings. It's just like, oh, there was like a mass murder here, or like people were dying here. And then they're like, yeah, this was a hospital ward during like World War II. And I'm like, yeah, what? Like just stuff like that. Or we would go somewhere and then I would read up on it and they'd be like, oh, this place is actually one of the most cursed or haunted places. And I'm like, I knew it, and I feel like everybody kind of gets imposter syndrome. And so I never really talked about it, because I'd be like, oh, I'm not outwardly telling people, oh, I'm a witch, or like any of this stuff, right? I'm not that I'm ashamed of it. It's just always been a part of who I am. And so I felt in like talking about it, other people would be like, oh, you're not a witch because you don't know this, because they were very into Wicca and all that stuff. And I'm like, just because I'm not researching it doesn't mean that these like feelings that I'm having or this knowing. And so I think it really just came from, as the older I get, of course, it's just people projecting stuff, right?
The witch police.
Yes. Yeah. And so to really just embrace it, there's not really one way to be a witch. I believe being a witch is really just connecting to your intuition. I used to be very religious, like very, very religious. And I took the Bible as literature and it completely changed my life. And I love history, and I'm not against anybody I respect everybody's personal beliefs, as long as they're not shoving it down my throat. But I completely respect people having their own spirituality, faith. Ultimately, I believe we're all talking about the same thing. And I do believe being a witch is you're connected to something that is greater than you. I don't know what the word is, like whatever it means to you, but we are connected in a way that is greater than just me as an individual.
So you ignored some of your intuition, but this year you are going in 100% paying attention to that little voice, to those guides, the spirit, whatever you call it.
Yes, I have started calling on my ancestors. I used to think that kind of sounded dumb. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be brutally honest. I was like, what? Like, people are dead. Not saying obviously, because I did see ghosts and the energy, believing in that energy. But to me, I guess when I was younger, I was just like, ghosts to me were like seeing a desk right there. Like, it's just real, right? It's not like anything that, because as a child, if you just grow up seeing it, it just becomes a thing. Like, it's not a supernatural or anything. It's just a part of your life, I guess. And so with the intuition and all that stuff, I would ignore a lot of that stuff at first.
So you actually see the ghosts. It's not just a feeling, but you see them.
I've definitely seen several ghosts. I have felt several ghosts. I've had encounters on camera, caught on camera at our work job. Like, it's been really crazy. And this was back in 2013, 2014. We didn't have social media to be able to post this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, I know there's stuff out there now that people are like, oh, that's fake. I'm like, no, I mean, maybe that is doctored, but the experiences are not fake. They're very real. There's definitely stuff out there. Like 100%. Yeah, no doubt in my mind.
Now, I have not seen ghosts, but I can feel them when they touch me. I just know when they're there, and I can smell them.
Wow. I've never been able to smell a ghost.
It lasts for a few seconds. Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. That would be really interesting. Yeah, I've never had that experience before.
I have a little story. I had a dog. She was a Chow Terrier mix, and she was 15 when she died. And we had to make the decision to put her down because she was suffering from bladder cancer. So the day that we knew we were going to put her down, I spent a few hours just laying down with her and talking to her.
Mhm.
And I told her, I said, after you're gone, let me know you're here.
Mhm.
So we put her down May 1st, 2020. When she had bladder cancer, right at the end of her life, we couldn't let her in the main part of her house. We had to keep her in the back hallway where there's a back door and there's a doggy door. So she was blocked off to the last part of the house. The wing,
Yeah.
the north wing.
Yeah.
So she couldn't control her bladder. So I was cleaning the floor all the time, pee.
Yeah, yeah,
It was
poor
a strong
baby. Yeah.
urine smell. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
terrible. So I was giving her a bath twice a day and mopping the floor. So that smell was so distinct. It was stronger than like a healthy dog pee.
Of course. Yeah.
2 weeks after she died, I was in the kitchen. I was with my husband and my other dog. And all of a sudden, I smelled that pee smell. It was 2 weeks. The house was cleaned. I had sanitized everything.
Yeah.
And she was not in the kitchen with that problem. And for a few seconds, I could smell that smell. I said, Schnooky is here. And my husband said, what? I said, she's here. She's in the kitchen. She's here with us. He said, what do you mean? I said, I can smell her. I can smell the pee. She's letting me know she's here.
Oh.
He goes, you're nuts, okay? And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, you're like, no, it's real.
But it made me feel good. She let me know she was there.
Yeah, that's so special. I used to work at the Dungeon. It's this like rock bar. It's very different now from when I was working there. It was still the owners had just taken over, so it still had the vibes from the old. It was a rock bar. It had been established in 1969, and it's also one of the most haunted places in New Orleans. Yeah, it's a really cool bar. If you guys are ever in New Orleans, you should definitely check it out. And I was working the downstairs bar, and it's small. So it's a very well-known staple, but it's small. And there's really only room for 2 bartenders. But if you're walking behind like a bartender, you have to like squeeze up on them. Like it's a very, very small cooped in bar. And I was the only bartender on shift. And I was working the 9 p.m. until 5 a.m. shift because it was a graveyard bar. I don't know about anymore, but when I was working there, it was only open from 9 p.m. until 5 a.m. Those were the hours. And then it was the bouncer, and the bouncer was taking the trash out. It was my second shift ever working, like by myself, not training. And they had told me that there had been experiences about like, bottles flying and like the bartenders getting hair pulled or things like that. And I was like, okay, yeah. And I'm washing dishes, and I felt a hand straight grab the back of my, but when you're getting your hair grabbed, right? If you're a girl, and it was a violent like grab and yank. I cleared that bar so quick and ran outside to my bouncer, and I was like, there's something in there. And we went back and rewound the cameras, and you could see my head just violently get jerked back. And I'm running, like I was running, and he was like, yeah, that's them welcoming you. Well, I find out later the reason that happened is the old bartender. So that bar had a really high turnover rate. The owners were, I don't really want to talk trash about them, but it was an interesting experience. So the turnover rate was pretty high. The previous bartenders, and it was very tradition since the bar had opened, that the original owners would do a shot of rum for the spirits, and we would put them, and you don't drink them. Like you just don't, like you put out a shot of rum, and every morning it would be gone.
So they were offerings.
Yes, offerings. So they were definitely they were for, it was a legend that it was an old pirate that would come in. And so we were leaving him any rum, Captain Morgan, right? I remember the girl who was training me, she told me that they had put out bottles of rum, but the new owners were saying we weren't allowed to do that because it's wasting alcohol. So what the bartenders were doing was doing still shots and putting them in a hidden part under the bar as still an offering, because things started going awry. The girl upstairs, she had claw marks on her back. There were videos of bottles just being thrown from one end to the other. And the new owners were like, whatever. And but the people working there, like, we knew. So, and I worked at that bar on and off for about 2 years. There's an energy in there, especially the upstairs bar when you're closing it down by yourself. We had a rule that we were not up there by ourselves at all. Like, no employees would be up there cleaning by themselves. It was a really dark energy. We were always terrified. And then if you turn off the lights, it was like, little kid, you're running down the stairs really quick to get away from it. It was interesting. That was one of the ones where I didn't see a person. I was also living in the French Quarter, and on my bed, I remember I was living on Frenchman Street in the French Quarter, this gorgeous apartment, 9-foot ceilings. I mean, it was 100 years old, just beautiful building. And I remember I was sleeping and I felt something sit at the end of my bed, and I woke up and it was just a little boy, and he looked like person, like not any of the Casper stuff, like it was just a person.
He wasn't see-through.
No. And ever since I was a little girl, that's how I've seen ghosts. And the reason I sometimes wouldn't even say anything is because to me, they just look like people. It's just a person there. The first time my mom kind of caught on, I was in ballet class. And I only went to a couple. I was terrible at it. The teacher said that every time she turned around, I would be making faces in the mirror. So they were like, this is not for her. And I remember I was telling my mom, I was like, oh, I made friends with this new girl in class. And my mom was like, that girl wasn't, what are you talking about? It took me years, even later, to like put 2 and 2 together, honestly, because I kept having occurrences like that, where I would be friends with somebody like on the playground, and people are like, no, you're like, and I don't have like bipolar disorder. I have ADD. I'm diagnosed ADD, like I don't have schizophrenia. I'm not diagnosed anything else.
But the ghosts don't scare you.
No, I don't get scared with ghosts. I have seen also like the dark energies, like dark clouds, or like that dark mass that gathers in like the corners of a room, or sometimes being able to see myself from my body up. That scares me. But seeing ghosts in itself, no, it doesn't really scare me anymore at all. Like I said, I've been seeing it since I was a kid. And I don't really talk about it a lot with people, like only really my closest friends, because it really is just a thing that happens to me. Yeah, ever since I was a kid, it's just something I would just see them. Or I had so many times in New Orleans that it was like a movie. I don't know how to explain it. And people who have lived there will tell you they have this same experience. Like, you're watching it from third person. You're like, this is a movie. This is a scene in a movie. This isn't real life. And this was one of those times. We were walking in the French Quarter. It was a very foggy night, very empty. I want to say it was like off season, probably summertime, because it was warm out. And we went to the carriage where the carriages are in front of Jackson Square, and there was only one carriage there. All the other ones had gone home. And we thought that was weird because they only have certain hours. And this guy, he was like, where are you guys going? And I was with my 2 other friends. And we were like, oh, I used to work at Coyote Ugly. Fun fact. So I was like, we're going to Coyote Ugly to go hang out with my friends, pick up my tips and hang out. And he goes, I'm bored. I'll give you guys a ride. And we were like, okay, cool. He told us his name was Jeff. He takes us on the carriage ride, is telling us really cool facts about the city. We're like, we're getting a free tour, whatever. We're all trying to pull money out and to tip him. And he was like, no, I don't want your money. I don't need your money. Like, this was really my pleasure. And we were like, cool. Thank you so much, Jeff. And like, we'll see you around. And he chuckled. I remember him being like, if you see me around. I never saw Jeff again. I never saw Jeff previous to that, and I never saw Jeff after that. And I lived in the French Quarter. When I tell you I walked by those carriages multiple times a day, or biking, or whatever, I knew I would walk down the street, people, you just know everybody. When you're working the French Quarter for 9 years, you know everybody. I never saw Jeff again. And me and my friends still talk about that. And it was like he disappeared into the mist, into that fog. There was another night we had a gallery. There was an art gallery that was in the middle of Royal Street. And I had never seen that gallery before. And I worked on Toulouse for years. The dungeon is on there, and as well as this bar on Bourbon that I worked at called the Old Opera House. I remember walking out of my shift one day and I look over and there's an art gallery and they're having food, all this stuff. I was like, cool. And I was with my friend and we went and we checked it out. There was a live piano player. There was free champagne. There was free food. We were like, this is so cool. We're going to tell our friends about this. We never saw that gallery again. That door in the alleyway was not there. Like we never, ever found it again. So
This is like a movie.
and this is stuff that happened with other people. So it's not, like I'm like, it's not just me who's like, no, this happened with other people. And find anyone who has lived in New Orleans longer than maybe like a year. I don't even think you have to give it a year. You will have experiences like that. Magical, sometimes very terrifying and violent because it goes hand in hand. I really believe that. I had the best times of my life and the absolute worst times of my life in that city.
It's interesting that you said you were with other people who had the same experience. And I know what you're talking about because I've had experiences where I'm by myself. And if I repeat what my experience, people will think it was in my imagination.
Totally.
For example, how I said that I can smell ghosts. I have two grandmothers. I have my American grandmother that I called Grandma, and I have my German grandmother who I called Oma. So my American grandmother wore this stinky old perfume. Like perfume that's outdated and is old.
Yes.
Okay. That's what she smelled like.
Okay.
When she is near me now, and she's been dead since I was 19 years old, so that's quite a while ago, but I smell that perfume. I don't know if that perfume is even sold anymore. I don't carry that perfume in my house at all. I don't purchase it, but I smell her, that stinky perfume.
Wow.
And then my Oma was a heavy smoker and she always smelled like an ashtray. I smell her occasionally and there's no one in my home who smokes.
Wow.
I know which grandmother is visiting me.
Wow. That is so interesting. I'm really intrigued with the smell thing. Because I really have never experienced that. And I haven't really heard of other people having that experience. So that is really cool.
And not only do I smell it, but you know how when you have some smells and your nose kind of tickles?
Yeah.
That comes along with that too.
Like a little tingle.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really special. That's honestly really special because I know smell triggers so many memories too. It has such a powerful emotion tied to it sometimes. So that is actually really powerful to be able to have that ability to be able to smell ghosts. I used to call my grandma Oma too. So she actually just passed away in January. And it's funny because I had written a poem about her. She was born in a time where women financially had to depend on a man. They did not have as many options. And I truly believe she was an artist through and through. I definitely have a lot of her in me, but we did not get along. She was not kind to me. She was actually my first bully. And as I've grown into an adult, I realized that I think that she saw a lot of herself in me and might have been jealous that I was able to be an artist when she was born in a time where it's not necessarily women's fault that they didn't have the opportunities that we have now. She had 5 children because birth control was not even discussed. Doctors didn't even tell women how they could do preventative. And she had confided in my sister that if it were up to her, she would not have had 5 kids. Not that she regretted it, but as a woman, I can't imagine that choice being taken away from me. And then she lived so many heavy things that I think about, and it just weighed her down. And I see the woman that she became. She was very aggressive and she was mean to me. She was not very kind to other people, but her family and her children, she left a beautiful legacy behind. She really did bring people together. She was an educator. And then she left everything behind in Mexico to come to the US. Yeah, she was not dealt the best cards and she really did the best she could. And I feel like in a way, I had written a poem about it and I started it 2 years ago. Her memory going, her body going, and it was about 5 years of her just slipping away. And she was an artist. I mean, through and through. My best memories with her are of creating. We were playing dress up, or she would do these beautiful cards that she hand painted herself. She did gorgeous landscape stuff. So I feel like now I'm living out my dreams for her in a way because she never got that chance. It has really healed after her death. It has healed our relationship after death because I feel her love now. I don't feel the bully. And whereas when she was alive, she was a bully. And so I did write a poem 2 years ago and I couldn't finish it. And the day she died, the following day, I finished it. The poem itself, the first ones are about her being kind of cruel and mean and how I think of her. And then the last part, funny, is soft. It was soft. Like what came out of me was soft. It was when I now think of Oma, she is painting on a hillside and she is happy. And arm in arm, now we can finally rest. Like just embracing each other. And I had this very vivid vision of my grandmother painting on a hillside. And I walked up to her and it was like full circle. And we did not have that kind of relationship in life. So I truly, deeply believe that healing can happen in a lot of ways. And it doesn't have to happen. Like if someone has a relationship in life with someone that's hard, it doesn't always have to be that way. That it's not the end of that. It can be a chapter for actual healing. Because even funny enough, my relationship with my mother healed when my grandmother died. It's been like a full circle kind of thing, very interesting. And so, yeah, back to spirituality of like, we are all connected. It is all connected. Like death is not the end. It's Western culture has really taken it. I feel like it's also a way to be able to capitalize on funerals, right? And all this stuff. But the concept of death in itself, I like to adopt like how the Aztecs saw it. It really is just a new adventure. You're just ascending to a completely different realm. There's so many forms in this world and so many truths that exist at once. Like we can't even fathom how many truths exist at once, right? In my opinion, comforting to me to think about that. We can heal that way.
Your grandmother was an artist, and you're an artist, and you write poetry. What other art do you do?
So I'm a singer. I'm actually yeah.
Really?
I'm a really good singer. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
Great.
So I started singing rancheras mexicanas actually with mariachi at like the age of 9, where Selena Quintanilla sang on Hemisphere Plaza and then downtown Arneson River Theater. Shout out San Antonio. Yeah, we were in a Hispanic Heritage Society. So my mom, when we moved here, my parents very much have always had the Mexican, like I'm Mexican first, right? Mexicana, was raised in a house that's all Mexico. My friend said you needed a passport to come in because there was no English speaking in this house, like at all. And I'm thankful to my parents for that. As a kid, it was annoying. As an adult, I'm like, thank you.
You spoke only Spanish at home?
No English at all. We were not allowed any English.
And where did you learn your English?
In school. Because we were in American culture in the house, my parents were like, there's absolutely no English to keep our Spanish alive. Because when you're with your friends and you're doing school activities, you're just speaking and everything on TV, everything is English, right? When it came to me being Gothic or loving witch stuff or supernatural, they were very freaked out. They were very freaked out. They were not understanding. My dad, it's been a hard journey to get my whole family to accept who I am because of that. I was very free-spirited and the black sheep, and I am very blunt. I don't understand certain norms of people being like, oh, you can't say that. I'm like, why? Like, it helps me understand you on a deeper level. Why can't I say that? I'm that kind of way. And I know it can be intimidating or abrasive to some people, but as I've gotten older, I have learned myself to soften, but also in finding my people and just being my most authentic self and not being afraid of that. And in me embracing who I have become, my family started embracing. And in me standing in my truth, and let me tell you, it was a lot of fights. It was a lot of fights with my parents of me saying, this is who I am. This isn't a phase. I know that you raised me as a Mexican woman. Like my mom is a socialite. My sister is a stay-at-home mom. I love that they have had that opportunity in their life, right? Because that is a privilege and not everybody has that. And I really hope that people are able to, if you're able to have privileges like that, don't be ashamed to take them, because it is an opportunity, and also acknowledging that it's a privilege, right? My parents did instill that in us of like, be aware that not everybody has this. And so I also do a shout out to them for that, of like the humility, right? And that it can go away at any time. It was hard. It was a lot of fights with my family. It was a lot of me really standing in my truth. And we've come a really long way. I have a great relationship with my parents. They are wonderful, and we have grown so much together. But as my mom said, she was like, you came here to teach us stuff, because we realized it wasn't a phase. It was definitely like who you are. But it took years and years and years of me fighting for it and really standing in my truth. And I feel like now with social media, people try to paint spirituality or healing like it's instant, right? Oh, I have this antidote for that. No, there's no antidote. Like, everybody's journey looks so different because your experiences are so different. Don't let anybody tell you what success looks like for you. And that is like the thing that my intuition tells me, because nobody knows what success looks like for them until they are successful. Success is different things, right? It doesn't necessarily mean money. It can be happiness, it can be whatever your definition of success is. But it's taken me a really long time. And one of my experiences with spirituality has been, there is no end goal. There is no finish line. You don't ever finish. It really is about the journey and standing so firm in your truth, in what you know is true, not because of what other people want you to do, right? But like in what you know is true. And it is hard. It's really hard when you're not, when you're perceived like as a witch, or you're perceived as someone who likes different things, right? Because occult stuff right now, I feel like there's a whole nother satanic panic going on, and people are trying to bring this whole fear-based narrative to supernatural and witch stuff. And it's, I see it as people trying to take away power of ourselves, our inner power. They're disempowering us, and anybody's a witch. Like, man, woman, anybody who's connected to themselves, who is working on manifestation, you're a witch. If you're working on your healing, you're a witch. If you do, like, witch is, I personally believe, just someone who is really connected and to their truth, and is okay with the dualities of figuring it out, and knowing that we're not ever going to know everything. We will never know everything, right? So,
Like you, I also didn't speak English until I went to school. I lived in Germany.
oh
And
wow,
yeah, so I lived in Germany. My mother's German, my father American, and my mother was learning how to speak English. So I came along right away. So I spoke German in the home. And when my father spoke to me in English, I answered him in German. So I didn't speak English until I went to kindergarten, and it was an American school. Somehow I understood that I was supposed to speak English. I don't know if I was told that, but I just
yeah.
intuitively knew that I couldn't speak German at school.
Mhm.
I'd like to talk to you about your business. You're a creator. What do you create?
I create handmade miniatures. I started off with store-bought stuff. I have always played with like Polly Pockets and doll houses, and I did do theater. I went to Oklahoma University my freshman year for set design, and I quickly realized university is not for me. I stopped doing theater and got out of it for a while, and I actually didn't make any art. I was only singing. And then in 2018, I was like, I kind of feel like making a little scene, like a shadow box scene, just random. And so I did it, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And so I just kind of went to the store and started buying like little miniatures. I didn't even know how to make them. So I just store bought, and then started making like coffins where I would decorate them with occulty like stuff. And people bought them. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll do a couple more things. And slowly my store-bought miniatures started becoming handmade. I started doing a lot of YouTube, playing around also like with polymer clay or like balsa wood. I think working in theater and working in a shop, like I worked in a wood shop from like 6th grade all the way until freshman year of college. So, I mean, that's it's like a good 6-7 years, right? So I knew sort of how to like make things. So in miniature, I was like, okay, well, I'll just make it tiny. I took out a lot of my old theater books and a lot of my old woodworking books, and then just kind of would apply those techniques into like smaller scale things.
What exactly is a miniature? Is that something like a dollhouse, like little dollhouse furniture and doll?
Yeah, there are a lot of stuff with miniatures, but yes, whatever you would think of like for dollhouses, my scale, I don't necessarily work with a certain scale. A lot of dollhouse, for reference, are 1/12 scale. So for every, I want to say, yeah, for every foot, it's an inch. So like in real life, if a bed is a certain amount of feet, then you would just convert that to inches is the scale. So a lot of miniaturists work with the scale. So recreating, yeah, the dollhouses, scenes, really cool historical furniture. And so for me, I don't necessarily work in a scale. I just eyeball it. So I have had some people buy some things for their dollhouses, but I'm not my brain doesn't necessarily work in a structured way. If I try to like sit and do it in a structured, then all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, outside the lines, and let's do this. So I have learned to just go with the flow. So yeah, I just recreate really cool little scenes that I think up in my head. And right now I'm just going with what I feel inspired to create. I was on Pinterest and saw really pretty aesthetic pictures of like rustic decor. And I was like, oh, I feel like I can put a frame over this. Oh, I wonder if I can make that in a like this exact picture in a smaller scale and like have it framed in 3D on your wall. And so I started right now. That's what I'm kind of exploring with. And it's been really, really fun.
You said that you are on YouTube. What's your YouTube channel?
Did I say I was on YouTube?
You did.
No, I was watching stuff on YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel, but I post more shorts. I have not, I'm very overwhelmed with all of the social media stuff that you need to keep up with. I will be starting a vlog. So I just got confirmation I'll be going to LA for 2 weeks. So I'm going to be doing a solo road trip. So I figured I'm going to vlog it. I'm going to start posting it on YouTube, and really it's going to be like a daily diary, I guess, if people are interested in wanting to check it out. And
what's it called?
Under the same name, Brujerias Shop. So it's just going to be like me, a miniaturist, going out to LA. And then I already have a connection in a gallery there. And then I have a friend who's recording an EP. So she and I are going to link up to do some music as well, because I would like to get back into singing. I've always loved solo travel. I think I've always thrived with road trips and traveling by myself. I used to live out of my car with my dog for like a year. I'm going through a breakup right now. So I was like, what is my intuition? What is my intuition telling me? And I really sat with myself and I asked the universe, I said, show me the path. What should I do? And then my friend, I went and saw her play her show after the market yesterday. And she was like, I'm going out to LA to record my EP. I'll be there until the 16th of June. You should really come out. And my cousin lives there. So I was like, I felt that tingle, right? How we were talking about whenever your body just knows. So I felt that tingle and I was like, this is familiar. So I was like, okay, like, let's see.
That tingle that you mentioned, I know exactly what you're talking about. That tingle. When I get that,
Yes.
I don't know what it means. I just know I need to act on it.
Yes. I can't even tell you. So I'm sitting there. Yeah, that tingle happened. My friend told me and she was like, come with me. I was like, okay, I'm calling my cousin, called my cousin, and he goes, you can stay with me as long as you like. No worries. I'll go with you to art galleries. He already managed a really good art gallery with his cousin out in Florida in Fort Lauderdale. So I was like, this is amazing. I was like, okay, from being sad and broke in San Antonio to being sad and broke in LA, might as well be sad and broke in LA for 2 weeks and really pushing my art out there. So I'm going to do a solo road trip out west, and it all came together within a matter of hours. I called my parents and I was like, can you watch my dogs? They said, absolutely. And I was like, oh my God, now all I got to do is raise money for that. So I just said, universe, show me how I can afford this. And I have full faith that.
So yeah, we have to listen to those magical tingles because that's the universe opening a door for us.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited about it. I can't stop thinking about it now. I'm like, I just know, I don't know what's going to happen. I am not putting expectations on it. I am just going there to create and make art and just really
Live.
Yeah, just have a really fun adventure. It's been 4 years since I've been on the road, and I used to take off all the time. I used to work music festivals. I mean, I've traveled, like I said, I grew up traveling to Europe. And
Well, we're about out of time. This has been a real treat. I had no idea what we were going to talk about today in our pajamas. So we got to know a little bit about you and your vision of ghosts and, yeah, that magical tingle. Well, thank you for coming on to the show.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate you.
Maybe we'll have to have you back to talk about more ghost stories after you come back from LA.
Absolutely. I would love that.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Thank you for joining us for Witchcasting with Theodora Pendragon. Have a burning question or have a topic you'd love Theodora and her guests to discuss on the show? Contact her through Instagram at Theodora Pendragon. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And help us spread the word by leaving us a rating and review and sharing it with your friends. See you next time, and may your magic always shine.